Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ANON Summit 2020. My name is Shiva Rahramani. I'm the co-founder of Sigma, and I have the honor to act as the moderator of ANON Summit for the next 2 days. I'm very thrilled to share with you that more than 8,000 registrations from almost 130 countries, literally from all around the world, have taken place. And I'm talking to people from everywhere. A very warm welcome to everyone. I hope that you have a coffee or tea ready for the next few hours because we are going to have plenty of interesting panel discussions and brilliant talks and so much more to offer to you. Obviously, I will walk you through some logistics of the panel and the platform, but before we do that, I would like to also welcome the hosts of the ANON Summit, Daniel Lenikus and Michael Beckes here. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi.
How are you? Excited?
I'm very excited. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Very thrilled to be here. So we are in a very beautiful location. Does it look familiar to you?
It does. Actually, it's a nostalgic moment being back here in the Gästehalle, the venue where Daniel and I hold the opening keynote for ANON 2019. I'm just so grateful that the whole team is working full-time on the project again. I think over 30 people are here today making this scenery what it is today. And as I said, a lot of good memories here.
I believe. And Daniel, good morning to you too.
Good morning.
So maybe you could tell us a little about your whole experience from organizing the event to then having to postpone it and then finally deciding that you want to fully have it online. I'm sure it was challenging and exciting at the same time, right?
It definitely was a roller coaster ride. I mean, it all started, of course, with Corona pandemic back then in March and April, and we've been seeing so many of our competitors cancel, and we were in a not so nice position because we had the choice to postpone it as well or to gamble, because we didn't know back then if the Austrian government will impose a ban on events or not. But then we decided to postpone to October, and we quickly realized with the whole situation evolving that it's very unlikely to have a successful event in October. Mm-hmm. So we said, what can we do? And then a good friend on Yavin, who unfortunately can't be here, but I'm sure he's watching right now, approached me and said, "Hey Daniel, why don't you do an online event?" And then I said, "Sure, let's do it. Partner up." So we partnered with Cointelligence, which is now a co-organizer as well. And then it was up to October, or we do it right now. And then we said, okay, we have 1 month, let's go, let's do it. Suddenly everybody had to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week from basically doing nothing. And it was crazy, but it was a good choice, I believe, because as we see, we have over 8,000 people attending. And yeah, I think we did the right decision, and we're very happy that everything is now taking place and everything is professional, and we are very excited.
Thank you. And Michael, on to you again. So maybe you could tell me the highlights that you are looking forward to the most during the next 2 days.
That's a hard question, actually. So I think my personal highlight would be the feature to network with the participants of the event. As you said, over 130 countries are participating in ANON 2020, which is insane in my opinion. It's just amazing, and after our little chat I will go straight to my laptop and network with as many people as possible. But in terms of the agenda, I think everything is exciting, but my personal highlight is the speech from Andreas Antonopoulos, just because I'm following him for years and he's one of the main guys that brought me into the space. But also tomorrow, I think the NFT topic excites me very, very much, just because it's relatively new to me, and I think it has a lot of potential. But as I said, it's a hard question. I don't know. Daniel, what do you say?
Tough question, definitely. And fortunately, a lot of our partners decided to announce stuff here at the ANON Summit. And for example, Raiffeisen Bank will be talking in public for the first time about their new project called RBI Coin, which I'm really looking forward today. Then we have also one of our main partners, Electroneum, gearing up for a major announcement. It will be a great surprise. And we have a surprise fireside chat, which still is a surprise. So stay tuned. It will start at 3 p.m. today, I guess. And tomorrow we have the Austrian Post announcing their CryptoStamp 2.0 with amazing new features. So it's like the full agenda it's a great experience. As I said, we have announcements, we have panels, we have surprise fireside chats, and we have the networking, and of course, like also my personal highlight is definitely also the keynote, closing keynote of Antonopoulos tonight. Right after us, we have the Austrian government announcing news about their blockchain strategy that's coming in place. So this is also great, because a lot of people don't have Austria on their map when it comes to blockchain, but we're definitely very upfront, and I think it's important to showcase this to people, and it's even greater that we now have 8,000 people registered that will now get the message. And yeah, I think for me the whole event is a highlight, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Michael. Before we get down to business and start with the first speaker of the day, I want to point out a few features of the platform that you will be using. I need to also point out that the organizers of this event did their best from the very beginning to create a very lifelike event. That's why we have plenty of features for you, and I'll quickly walk you through some of them. So on the right side of your screen, you will see the chat area, which quiet is busy already. That's nice. If you have any questions throughout the day, you can ask them here. You can post comments. You can basically start interesting discussions. And the chat moderators will do their best to respond to your questions as fast as possible. Obviously, you have seen the guidelines and the rules that have been sent out to you last week. I just quickly mention one more time that this chat area is here to be used as a platform for exchanging information. So please, let's keep it that way and no spamming. If you violate the chat area rules after a few times of notice, you will have to be removed from the whole event. So let's keep it that way. Also on the left side of your screen, you will see what we will call a floor plan, like a live event. You have the networking area, you have the sessions area and the expo area. Make sure to browse through the whole area throughout the day, but especially from 1 to 3 p.m. and that's when the break on the main stage is happening. So even though there is a break on the main stage, you can still check out the expo area and the sessions area for more insight. All right, I think we can then just jump right in. I wish to also say that we don't only have international experts with us today and tomorrow, but we also have high-level political representation. I would therefore like to give a very warm welcome to the Austrian Federal Minister for the EU and the Constitution in the Austrian Chancellery, Karoline Edtstadler, who will be delivering the keynote speech. A very warm welcome and good morning to you, Minister Edtstadler.
Good morning and thank you so much. It is really a big pleasure for me speaking here today at your summit. Under other circumstances, it would have been my pleasure to welcome you all here in Vienna. You are definitely meeting in special times. Well, this year, we are meeting online, and that also shows how our lives, our businesses, our working methods were affected by the COVID-19 crisis. But it shows also how flexible we are, how quickly we adopted to this situation, and I can also congratulate you to this summit. How to react now, how to adopt our lives, that was also the question from the first day of the COVID-19 crisis. And of course, it is a really big challenge for all of us, for our businesses, for our working methods, for our lives. We had to accept that challenge. And luckily in Austria, we acted quickly and we set very strict restrictions from the first moment. And so far, we were successful. That is why we, as one of the first members of the European Union, were also in a position to lift some of these restrictions, to take back some of these very strict measures? Well, for that, life is going on under other normalities, under somehow a new normality, but shops are reopened since more than a month. Pupils are back to school since last week. Shops and restaurants are open since last Friday. And at the end of May, also the hotels will reopen. However, we have to stay cautiously, we have to act diligently, and we have to cooperate strongly with our neighboring countries, with the regions surrounding Austria. And we are also ready to press pause if we see a fallback in the infection rates, in the numbers of infected people. Keeping people aware and on our side. That's the most crucial and most important thing at the moment. So far, people in Austria are really committed and the curve flattened, and so that is also something which I would consider as a big success of these strict restrictions. Now, it is the time to return to normality, to something like a new normality. And conferences like this seem to be part of this new normality. Now, it is the time to prepare also for the future. It is crucial now to draw the learnings and to take the chances and the changes out of this crisis. We also have to talk about economy. I would say it is the most serious damage, the most serious effectiveness of economies worldwide since the 1930s. GDP decrease is higher than ever since the 1930s. IMF's forecasts draw a dark picture. We have to face reality. 7.5% decline in the Eurozone, about 7% decline also in Austria, and employment raised a lot. Since the shutdown in March in Austria, the increase of unemployed people was by 300,000 people. That's why the Austrian government set support measures. They were adopted quite quickly after the starting of the crisis and worth than 38 billion euros equivalent, and I want to mention that, of 10% of the Austrian GDP. In addition to that, also the European Union set measures, and the heads of state and government agreed to a 540 billion euro stimulus package within the European Union. By challenges we are facing at the moment, money can't solve all of them. In the contrary, it is very important to draw the right lessons now, because the weakness of Europe was also exposed in this situation. When it comes to the health crisis, we have to say it clearly that Europe was not prepared for a pandemic of that scale. We realized that many things we needed most in this health crisis were no longer produced in Europe. For example, medication, ventilators, or other things like masks. This is only one example. And I would like to add also that instead of showing our strength in Europe, for example, by joint procurement, every state acted on its own, and every state had to act on its own to overcome this crisis. Well, I'm not a pessimist, but I think we really have to say it clearly that we have to learn out of this crisis. And more of this weakness will be exposed when it comes to the economic crisis in Europe. In the recent years, the European Union had problems with keeping up with the global players like China or also the US. And that's what we have to change now. And now also the optimist in me comes through. It is crucial, and it is a historical moment now to overcome the weakness of Europe, to overcome the weakness which was exposed and expressed by this crisis. We have to strengthen our power, which we have if we are acting swiftly, if we are acting together. It is the time now to complete the common market. It is the time now to establish Europe as a hub of innovation, as a hub of technology, and as a champion in the fight against the climate change. It is how we have to do that. And it is now very crucial to start a discussion how we can tackle this crisis, how we can create a European Union who is ready, who is fit to challenge and to face challenges like this. The Austrian government and I, as a Minister of Europe, we are urging our European partners to start this process of the Conference of Europe, to start this process of an in-depth discussion of further strengthens and of how to strengthen the European Union now. It is the time now to roll our sleeves up and to work on that hard. And when it comes to blockchain, I really want to reiterate that it is a success we should establish here in Europe. Success will, however, also depend on the engagement of private sector as well as individuals like all of you. It is therefore great to see what is happening today. Blockchain is a perfect example of a technology which we need in Europe and where we should play a global leading role in that regard. This requires two things. It requires that we are creating the necessary environments here in Europe, and secondly, it is needed to bringing the best and smartest people in the field of blockchain to Europe and to Austria. I therefore commend the people behind the ANON Blockchain Summit 2020 for putting together such an incredible event. Austria is certainly committed to creating the necessary environment in order to use the great potential in the application scenarios for blockchain technology presented here today. We want to set standards for digital management services, for digital security, for digital identity, for the digital currency, and also for digital cooperation. In addition, we are committed to uniform regulation in the European Union, to closely follow now the developments, the dialogue in blockchain scenes, and also bringing together politicians, decision makers, and potential users. You as the business guys, you as the experts. In addition, we would like to strengthen applied research in this field of technology. We can be so much stronger. I'm convinced of that if we are acting together, if we are acting smart and swiftly. And that's where you are really experts in this field. We need you as politicians to guide us also the way, and we are committed to help you in that field. As I said in the beginning, these are certainly challenging times, and it would be so much nicer to welcome you in Vienna in person. But I'm convinced that we will be able to do that in the future. We here in Austria certainly want to make use of the opportunity this challenge and this crisis shows us and gives us. And I'm convinced that we can become much more stronger than we were in the past if we're working together. Please keep that spirit. That's really the spirit we need. And for this conference, for this summit, I wish you the greatest success. I hope to see you soon in Vienna in person. And well, all the best for you. See you soon.
Thank you very much, Minister. This was very insightful. Today we have two great tracks on the agenda, and tomorrow we will have two more. The first track of the day is Banking and Finance from 10:30 to 1 p.m. And the second one is Open Finance and Decentralized Finance from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., of course, Vienna time. We will start the day right off with the topic where it all started over 10 years ago, banking and finance. So, welcome back, everyone. Let me quickly also one more time point out the session area is the area that you will be using for networking. So maybe you have read the guidelines, but I'm repeating them here again. You have about 10 minutes. You will be connected to a random person. You have about 10 minutes to basically present yourselves and network with them. Of course, you have the possibility to do it through your through a video chat. So make sure that your camera is on and the background is pleasant. I'm very excited to also see that the chat area is very, very busy already. Make sure that you also check out our expo area. Some of the speakers that you will hear from today and tomorrow will also be present in their booth. You can browse through the booth the whole day, but especially we recommend that you do that between 1 to 3 p.m., both today and tomorrow, because that's when the break on the main stage is happening. So shall we start with the first track of the day? Cutting the middleman, making money and payments available to everyone in a secure and transparent and decentralized way. The initial vision and idea behind Bitcoin has been the reason for the overall development of this Bitcoin industry that we've been observing for the past few years. Today, we have reached a point where more and more traditional players are coming to space. From global payment service providers to banks and even central banks, almost everybody is involved now. Let's hear what they've got to say. We start the day with a fireside chat with Sadeh, who is the founder and chairman of the board from SAGA Monetary Technologies, and Yavin, who is the founder and CEO of Co-Intelligence, excuse me, and co-host of the ANON Summit 2020. We have Daniel here with us again. Daniel, hi again.
Hey.
So, are you excited about the first track? Can you elaborate on the first track and what it has to say?
Definitely, I'm very excited about the first track. Let me tell you a little bit what we thought about structuring the agenda in total. So the first track will be about banking and finance, and the second track will be more about open finance and decentralized finance. What I had in mind is we start today with a little bit more of the traditional use cases of blockchain. As you already mentioned, it all started with banking and finance and, creating a new world of financial freedom for everybody. But it seems that more and more traditional players are entering the space as well. As we're seeing it now, we will have a speech from Raiffeisen Bank, we will have a speech from a big telecom industry, which are also working in payments. So we see that more and more of the people that were actually meant to be cut out, the middlemen, the trusted third parties, they are also now entering the space. They want a piece of the cake. So let's hear what they've got to say. Let's give them a chance to explain their reasoning, their decision making. And then on the second part of the day, we will be hearing a lot more about decentralized and open finance, about the true innovation that comes with blockchain. We will have people talking about decentralized lending, peer-to-peer lending. We will have people talking about staking. We will have a panel about alternative investments during COVID-19. Are alternative investments seeing more and more traction because of a pandemic? So, yeah, this is the first day that we are now looking forward to. As I mentioned, tradition in the morning, innovation in the evening, or in the second part of the day. And yeah, let's see what's going on and what speeches and what the participants also think about it. So we invite everyone to share their opinions as well in the chat. Mm-hmm. Let us hear what you think. Also tell me if you think that it makes sense what I told you. Do you think the agenda makes sense in that way? I'm really looking forward to your opinion. And yeah, back to you now.
So what do you expect from the tracks on day 2?
Day 2 starts with tokenization. And tokenization is a topic that I'm personally very interested in because my family has a real estate background and there's a big hype about real estate tokenization. People were talking in 2019 only about tokenization of everything. But the topic is falling far behind their expectations because the regulatory hurdles are just too big. I mean, nobody, regulation was here, tokenization was here, and it was supposed that they meet in the middle, but it seems that regulation is not moving. So tokenization is really stuck at the moment. But we have also the more innovative part of tokenization. It's a little bit like the finance part. We have the traditional finance and we have the more innovative finance use cases. In tokenization, it's the same. We have digital assets tokenization of bonds, stocks, real estate, and we have tokenization of digital items, of collectibles, which is called, generally non-fungible tokens, the NFT space. And the NFT space is, in my opinion, the hottest topic in blockchain right now. A lot of companies are trying it out. As you see, the Austrian Post is trying it. I read an article about that Lamborghini is now also issuing NFTs. We have big wineries issuing NFTs. We have Nike having patents on crypto kicks. So a lot of good stuff is happening there. And this is also a funny part because blockchain was meant to be very innovation driven, and now we already see more traditional use cases and very innovative use cases. So on the first part of the second day, we will start with the, again, traditional part on tokenization, and then move more and more into the really innovative part on tokenization, on NFTs in gaming, NFTs in collectible art and everywhere. And we have very, very great lineup of speakers in the NFT space and on the NFT panel. And for the second part of the second day, to not get confused, we will be talking a little bit more about blockchain and crypto in general. It will be more open discussions. We have a great panel on trading on market volatility, and I think volatility is volatility in crypto is a different volatility than everywhere else, and people are quite used to 10%, 15% jumps per day sometimes. And it's going to be great to hear the panel talk about their different strategies there.
Right.
We have a great panel with Matti Greenspan, Ton Wees, Leah Wald, and Anatoly Kniatsev. So I think it will be a very knowledgeable panel, and you will be able to learn a lot. And yeah, that's basically the whole agenda. And yeah, Michael and I already talked about our favorites, and for me it's hard to tell. I'm really excited because we will what I wanted to basically showcase in the agenda is that blockchain already has its traditional and very innovative use cases, even in the same small niche and topics. So this is my explanation and my idea behind the agenda. Do you have any other questions?
Daniel, thank you very much for that. I think we can slowly get back to our fireside chat. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So Ido and On are going to be talking about the money involved. Who should issue it? How can we deal with its volatility? And what can we learn from COVID-19 crisis and its impact on the global economy? We have Ido and On here with us. On, hello and good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Thank
to see
you for the
here.
warm welcome, Shiva. And
Yeah,
I'm very excited to be here today. To start off, I'd like to say thank you for everyone for joining us today. And I'd also like to thank my partners at ANON Summit, Daniel and Michael. It's been a great pleasure working with them towards ANON Summit. And I'm very excited about this specific fireside chat with Ido from SAGA because for me, blockchain and cryptocurrency is all about trust, transparency, and we are trying to change the world. We are trying to make the world a better place, and we are doing it with advancement and progress at many of the different industries, including the financial industry, obviously. I will add to that, I would like to add to that as a part of my personal mission and my company's mission, Cointelligence, for mass education and mass adoption, I'm so excited to see that we've had so many people registered to the event today. We've had almost 8,500 people registered so far. And I can see that we got about 1,000 people connected with us already now, which is so exciting for me. Not because it's great for me to see so many people connected to our event, but also because it shows that there is huge interest in blockchain and cryptocurrency. And for me, it's mostly important. Now, I'd like to welcome and introduce Ido from SAGA, which is a project that I personally like, and I'm happy to allow Ido to share his thoughts and vision and so on. But before we get into that, I'd like to give Ido the stage to introduce himself and say a few words before we start. Hi, Ido.
Hello, On, and hello, everyone who's watching, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to participate in ANON this year, even if remotely. So my name is Ido Sademan. I'm leading the SAGA project, which we have founded a little shy of 3 years ago. And the vision behind SAGA, and I'll remain very brief, is to create a global currency that is complementary to existing national currencies, under the presumption that, which I think is strengthened in the past few months, that we are a part of a global economy, side by side with the fact that we are part of each and every one of the national economies that we belong to, and that while national currencies, or fiat currencies as we call them, are designed to meet their national economies, we are lacking a global currency, a global store of value, and medium of exchange, and eventually even a unit of account to allow us to stay safe in the face of a global economy and global commerce. In order to do that, we've obviously taken quite a lot of inspiration from Bitcoin as the first non-governmental currency of the modern age. But we also analyzed several caveats that we aim to solve, one of which is being able to tame volatility on the way towards independence. And this is obviously quite an elaborate and complicated task to achieve, but we believe it is essential if we are to gain the feature of being able to serve as a medium of exchange and as a store of value. And yes, we're very happy to have launched December 19, quite late and quite recently. And this is partly due to the fact that we are and insisted on being compliant to the regulation. We're launched out of the UK and therefore comply with AML, KYC, and any other regulation enforced in the UK, which is a long process, but we believe is the right way to move forward.
Thank you for that. And I have to say that I completely agree with you. I'm a big fan of regulation for blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I think that the only way that we will see the industry growing and progressing in a good way is if we have the proper regulation for this amazing innovation and amazing industry. Now,
I'm afraid that if we keep agreeing, we'll have a dull fireside chat. So,
actually, while I was talking, I was thinking that usually I don't agree with many people on the fireside chats and panels, but I'm sure that we'll find something.
I'm sure we will
on the fireside chat today. We are going to talk a lot about the money problem, the money issue in the world, the way that I see it. And just as an introductory sentence or headline, I woke up today for a headline that says that Germany enters recession as over 100 banks charge negative interest rates. I think that most people in the world don't really don't want to realize that the financial system is actually broken. I mean, we've seen a financial crisis happening approximately every decade. We see the money printing that is happening, and it's like a complete chaos the way that I see it. And I'm not, and that leads me to the first question that I would like to ask you today, and that is, I know that SAGA is geared towards becoming a global currency. And a global currency is something that is being talked a lot because of the COVID-19 crisis. What would you say to those who claim that globalization is dead after the COVID-19 crisis?
I would say that I think that if we have anything to learn from COVID-19, it is that globalization is here and it is here to stay. And while it comes with quite a lot of opportunities, it also comes with risk. And in COVID-19, we've seen the risk of trying to face in national constructs, in national power structures, a problem or a challenge that is not national. And I'm afraid that many of the challenges that you've mentioned are a part of the same thing, although the financial system is less visible, less obvious than a virus that keeps us at home. It is about the same thing. There are several challenges that we are trying to deal with, whether it's climate change. We're having a fireside chat as in May in Tel Aviv, we're experiencing the worst summer ever with 45 degrees. Whether it's the financial system or whether it's a global pandemic. I really think that globalization is far from vanishing simply because we are now constrained to our national states because of a crisis. I think that if at all, it is the proof of the contrary. We are confined, and however, we are here, 8,000 people on a digital using digital means to be on a conference, to be able to continue and interact, because this is a part of our life. The attack of supply chain, trying to get back from globalization to onshoring, is a reactionary measure to the fact that globalization brings challenges, and that some would wish to go back to a reality where people are not operating globally. But for us, for globalization to truly be dead, we need to stop communicating with each other in the intensity that we are now. And I think that, again, this conference is a good proof. We should stop traveling, and we should stop shipping goods from one country and continent to the other. I don't think that any of that is about to happen. And therefore, there are challenges to globalization. The resolution of such challenges comes in deploying new systems and new tools to face it, not in trying to re-engineer a travel in time to a national reality. We're not going back there.
I'm sorry to say, but I agree with you.
That's becoming a habit.
What makes SAGA and similar attempts to create a global currency a solution looking for a problem rather than a problem looking for a solution?
So, we were used to being accused of being a solution looking for a problem up until about 2 years ago, saying, well, we have perfectly functioning fiat currencies. They have been with us for quite some time. One can always exchange between the currencies at will. And so what is exactly the problem? So I'll answer by an example. If you're a UK citizen and you've underwent Brexit for the past 3 or 4 years, and you've seen the value of the pound dropping because of Brexit, well, when you purchase in your own national economy, you're actually fine. The British economy reacts to the same Brexiting decision. But when you go and you buy on Amazon, the prices there have very little consideration for Her Majesty's Parliament decisions. And therefore, you remain exposed and you've seen your purchasing power drop by approximately 25%. And this is the reality. The reality is that prices all over the world are no longer constrained to being set by the government of the country we live in. I think that now it is even more consensual that the world needs a global currency. And it comes from two elements. One is that more and more personalities and office executives in the traditional world are claiming that it is necessary. We're seeing that central banks are very apprehensive from global currency attempts, and apprehension is usually a recognition in the need, because if they thought that it was not needed, they would not apprehend it. You see Christine Lagarde at her former position as the head of the IMF claiming that if the IMF and international bodies would not generate solutions, then the industry will. You see Mark Carney, who just stepped down from his office as the governor of the Bank of England, claiming that the dollar is probably no longer suitable to serve as a global currency, and that a synthetic basket, a digital currency, relying on a synthetic basket of currencies should probably replace it. And I think that this leads to the second point, which is that what we're seeing now is the United States printing several trillions of dollars to aid its economy facing the crisis. But these dollars that are printed are the reserve currency serving the entire world, and not just the United States. And the rest of the world is not benefiting from this printout of money. This is clearly a signal that relying on a national currency, and this national currency can be very strong, powerful, and with us for a long time, but still the reality remains the dollar is being managed in the United States by the United States, whether reacting to fiscal policy or deploying monetary policy in favor of the US economy, which is a perfectly legitimate cause, but it can no longer serve alone as a global currency. It simply does not provide the security and the stability for citizens of other nations in the globe.
Yeah, I can say that I've heard many people are worried about what you just mentioned, and about the percentage, the small percentage of the Americans compared to the rest of the world. And we all have to abide by the US dollar. And that leads me to my next question to you, which is something that I've noticed recently. And I don't see that many people are talking about it. According to what you've said, and I agree with that, we should be expecting hyperinflation and price growth, which hasn't happened so far. We also haven't seen the value of the US dollar plunging. And considering the huge printing being done, that doesn't make sense. Can you explain how you see this situation?
So it is indeed a very puzzling time, because on one hand, as you've mentioned, Germany is facing recession. There is a force that is a deflationary force. On the other hand, with massive money printouts, one could expect hyperinflation. I think it is really way too soon to tell. Markets are still fluctuating. There are many anomalies that are escorting this process. We're seeing the stock exchanges rise in several places in the world, while we are absolutely sure that the real economy, right, is still under shock, is still underperforming, and it doesn't make sense. So the first answer is that it is probably too soon to tell. The second answer is that this is a part of what's broken in the financial system. Currencies are measured against each other. And the dollar as the reserve currency is really the unit of account of the world. So there is a sort of inherent protection from the dollar value plunging, unless the countries that are using the dollar as a reserve currency start using other metrics. And we've seen some signs that this is happening, not only recently by COVID-19, but with the Chinese decision to maintain a renminbi petrodollars. I think that a lot of the CBDC run by central banks is geared towards looking at alternatives to the dollar as a reserve currency, in which case I think that we will go back to the basic, which is that when you print money, especially in such in such quantities, you're firstly indebting the generations to come, but secondly are running the risk of hyperinflation. I really don't think that it is safe to assume that this risk is behind us and that money printing can continue, or as the meme would have it, that the burr can continue without suffering the consequences.
Yeah, the burr, the new buzzword that
Yes.
we're seeing everywhere. Before I ask you the next question, I would like to mention to our audience that when I am finished with my questions for Ido, we will be accepting a few questions from the audience. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to start suggesting them now, and we will be choosing about 2 to 3 questions from the audience soon. So moving on to the next question, and to talk more specifically about the SAGA operations, after we've discussed the general thoughts, our thoughts about the economy and money in general, can you please explain to us what is actually SDR?
Yeah, so if you'll allow me, I'll take a step back to the beginning of my introduction. So we wanted to introduce a contender to become a global currency, but it was clear to us that we needed to tame volatility. And the way we chose to do it is very similar to the way that central banks adopted decades ago, which is to start by fully relying on an asset that is already trusted, pegging, maintaining a reserve that would redeem the currency and therefore would create a floor and a ceiling to the price and tame volatility. It was clear to us, though, that we do not want to rely on a single currency. Exactly because of the reasons we've just mentioned, we don't want to be tied to the monetary and fiscal decisions of any single nation state. We looked for a sort of international average on the way to becoming global. And so a very natural choice was the SDR. The SDR is a basket of currencies that exists since 1969. It was developed by the IMF and is used ever since by central banks to hold their reserve when they don't want to be exposed to any single national currency. It is comprised out of the 5 most traded currencies in the world: US dollar, euro, yen, renminbi, and pound, in different weighings, obviously. And it gets updated if there is no urgent cause for updating the weighings. The weighings are updated every 5 years. And so relying on the SDR allowed us to do 2 things. One is to tame volatility of SGA vis-a-vis a global average of value and not a specific single market. On the other hand, it allows us to render accessible a currency that up until now was accessible only to central banks. The only ones that are allowed to hold SDR are central banks. And we cannot hold SDR, so we're obviously holding a replication of the currencies held in regulated banks. But what we're really giving is the ability to hold SDR through holding SGA, or through a replication of the SDR through holding SGA, which is extremely relevant in times like this, when no one knows how unstable currencies will continue to become, to be, or become even less stable than they are now. And in times of crisis, there is one principle that always wins, which is to diversify. The SDR is one option for such diversification and the ability to offer it in extreme liquidity and ease, encapsulated in one currency, we believe is helpful.
Thank you for explaining that. And what comes to my mind is something that I'm pretty sure that other people might think as well. And basically, according to everything that you're explaining, SAGA sounds like a stablecoin. So can you explain to us if SAGA is indeed a stablecoin?
So the short answer is no. The longer
we want the long answer.
The longer answer is that we're starting as a stablecoin. But if you look at the market, we have two main approaches, and I'm oversimplifying. One is the Bitcoin approach, saying fully independent, non-correlated to anything going on in national traditional financial markets. And the other approach is the stablecoin approach, saying, well, we need to be stable if we want to use those currencies. And the perfectly logical way to constantly remain stable is to peg an existing currency. So these are two approaches, and we see ourselves as a kind of bridge between the approaches. The claim is very simple. When the economy is small, when the SAGA economy is small, it enjoys a very low trust and a very low network effect, and therefore, by design, it will be volatile. And so we are fully reliant on the SDR to stabilize the price of SAGA. But it's a flexible supply of money model, meaning when someone buys SAGA from the smart contract, SAGA is created. When someone sells it back to the smart contract, SAGA is being burned. And so the quantity of SAGAs in the market is determined solely by the market. We cannot print money, which I believe is an important feature in any monetary model, especially in those days. What it allows us to do is to consider that the amount of circulating supply of SAGA, as it is determined by the market, attests to the network effect and to the size of the economy, and allows us to gradually, and when I'm saying us, it's a sort of a royal we, it's the smart contract that does it automatically, to gradually decrease the reliance on the SDR reserve, and therefore to gradually become independent, to gradually become uncorrelated to existing currencies, until eventually we become completely independent, just like Bitcoin is, with a determined supply of money. But this is done in the SAGA model at $5 trillion of market cap. And the assumption, which is based on past experiences, is that an economy of this size is already stable enough on its own, stabilized by the fact that the currency is being used to trade and enjoys a massive support and trust, that it can sustain the volatility because of its own intrinsic elements, and does no longer needs those crutches, if you want, of relying on a different currency. So we start by being 100%. At this point, we are 100% backed by the SDR, and so one would be able to call it a stable coin, but this is something that the protocol is in charge of changing as the economy strengthens.
That's very interesting, and I have to say that it also sounds complicated to our audience that is watching. If you didn't understand what we discussed until now, especially the last explanation, obviously you can read about it in length on the SAGA website, and I do encourage you to do so, since it is such a game changer. But you asked me before to, so we'll argue a bit. So I'm going to ask you a controversial question. Let's see how you can manage that. So your goal...
I'll do my best.
Your goal is to serve as a global currency, integrated within the current financial system, governed in the interest of its holders, and endowed with the features to become a true store of value and means of exchange. How do you intend to achieve this based on the criticism that Libra has already faced for very similar goals?
So first of all, I think that criticism is good. You know, when we started the SAGA, then we brought on board a team of advisors that would be a sort of sounding board to our ideas, and we brought them from the traditional. We're very happy for them to have joined. People like Professor Jacob Frenkel, the previous governor of the Bank of Israel, and Professor Myron Scholz, they weren't constantly in agreement with our models, and I think that this sharpened our model. So first of all, criticism is not bad. It's when it's not a paralyzing criticism, it's a way to improve. But to your question about Libra, I'm not dodging the question. I think that there are several fundamental differences between the projects, although there are several similarities. Obviously, the reliance on the basket, and especially now that Libra has revised its white paper and has decided to rely on the SDR as a basket, here is a similarity. And there are many things that we believe that Libra is doing that are very sensible and at the right directions. At the same time, there are several key differences. The first difference is that we do not control SAGA. SAGA is controlled by a smart contract, and when the smart contract is not enough to control, it is controlled by the holders of SAGA. Just to give an example, SAGA was launched on December 10th, 2019. On December 10th, 2020, there are going to be elections for the board of directors of SAGA. And those elections are voted upon by SAGA holders, any SAGA holder. So it very well may be that on the occasion of the next ANON conference, I won't be the one speaking on behalf of the project. We believe this is essential. Accountability. The fact that all the incentive of the monetary operation is to serve the interest of the currency holder is at the base of what we're trying to do. And I think that without referring to Facebook particularly, the idea that a corporate that answers to its shareholders by design can be the issuer of a currency, we believe is an idea that is risky, and it is an idea that clouds the legitimacy of private issuance of money. We don't believe that money should be issued privately. It can be issued non-governmentally, but then it needs a structure to ensure that the currency holders are eventually the sovereigns of the currency. There are many ways of doing it. Bitcoin is one way, ours is another, but the principle stays the same. This is one thing. The second thing is that when you look at the FSB declaration from less than a month ago, and from the European Chamber declaration a few months ago, what really worries them is the fear to financial stability. And here we have a sort of size advantage, just simply because we are small. We are a bottom-up operation. We believe in being a bottom-up operation when it comes to trialing money. We are eventually dealing with the livelihood of people. And people are reticent to change, and rightfully so. We should all be very careful when we're dealing with the livelihood of people. And so when authorities are looking at a corporate that already has a reach of more than 2 billion users, it is looking at it differently than when it looks at a startup who is growing from the bottom up and have to earn the trust of their participants and users. And so I think that those two key differences makes the project very different, and eventually the proof is in the pudding. We are out compliant with regulation, and available. I would use this stage to add that we're not available in the United States because of wanting to be fully compliant with regulation. A key condition to it is regulatory clarity. Unfortunately, we are not feeling that the United States regulation currently provides this clarity that would make us comfortable to render SAGA available in the States while being compliant, and therefore we are not yet available in the state. I hope that this will change in the future.
Thank you very much for the answer, and it was insightful. I'd like to take the remaining time that we have to allow the audience to ask questions. The first question that we have is from Raymond Molnar. I apologize if I said the name wrong. And the question is, which type of consensus SAGA is using?
So when it comes to the smart contract, the smart contract is deployed on Ethereum, and so the mining consensus is an Ethereum one. But when it comes to the governance of SAGA, then we've developed our own consensus mechanism and our own voting mechanisms. And I'll just touch on a few points because it's rather complicated. So, for example, as I've mentioned, we're going to have our first elections on December 2020. Up until then, we have no right to change anything on the smart contract. But if after that, when we are elected and there is a monetary committee that is elected and in place, and it wants to introduce a change to the smart contract, then it may do so, but this change is subject to a veto right by all the currency holders, by a majority of the currency holders. So we try to find a balance between the possibility to leverage expertise. We believe that monetary decisions should be expertise-based, but at the same time, this expertise needs to be at the service and needs to be checked and by the sovereigns of the currency, which are the currency holders. So this is a different consensus mechanism. We methodically separate two elements. One is the execution of the protocol, and there the consensus mechanism is the Ethereum consensus mechanism. We are in the process of supporting additional chains, but then we are not interfering with the consensus mechanism of the chain. For the updates of the protocol, we believe that pure blockchain is not enough. And therefore, we've developed our own governance framework, which I invite you to read about under the governance tab at saga.org. Just, do I have one more minute on?
Yes, we have one last minute. So if you can say 30 seconds, if you can say final words, and I'm sorry that we're not able to take more questions, but I would like to mention that everyone can connect with SAGA today and tomorrow at SAGA's booth, and you can ask all the questions that you would like to ask. And I'm sure that Ido and his team will be happy to answer them. You have 20 seconds for final words.
So I think we're living in interesting times, whether it's the Chinese angle of wishing interesting lives. It's going to be hard and it's going to be challenging. I really think that we have an opportunity as the crypto industry to gain attention, from people that are seeking for alternatives, for stability, for trust alternatives. And I think that we also have a huge responsibility to be there to the rendezvous and to act responsibly to be able to fulfill this alternative. I think one message is that I think we are not past the crisis, although we very much want to, and we're not past instability. And I think this year is going to be a very meaningful year for our industry if we are able to serve as part of the cure, of the healing that the market needs so terribly.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone watching and listening, and I hope that you will have a great rest of the day at ANON Summit. And I will pass it on to Shiva. Back to Shiva now.
Thank you very much, Ido and On, for this very interesting fireside chat. Now we want to continue with our next speaker, who is Richard Ells. Richard is the founder and CEO of Electroneum, and he will be talking about whether crypto adoption drives the market or the market drives the crypto adoption. Very much looking forward to his insight. Richard, welcome, and the stage is yours.
Hi everybody, welcome to the ANON Summit, the first virtual summit that I've ever done, and probably the first virtual Crypto Summit that most of you have done as well. It's a pleasure to be here in my own house in these strange times. I hope that you and your families, in fact, are all well and safe as we go about this strange COVID problem that the world is facing. Now, my speech here today is entitled, Does the Market Drive Adoption, or Does Adoption Drive the Market? So to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Richard Ells. I am the founder of a cryptocurrency called Electroneum. You may or may not see me touting it in my own background. But what my background is I've always been in technology. I've got a digital agency that's still running that I started 23 years ago with a business partner way back when in 1996. That's still running and going very well indeed. I have another project as well that is a social media management platform for large brands. It's used by some really big corporate brands around the world. And that's going strong as well. So I've got a big background in technology, and I had a huge development team at my disposal, or who are also good friends of mine. And we were all kind of looking at crypto back in the day. So this would have been back, well, my first experience of looking at Bitcoin certainly was through a blog that I read from time to time called Zero Hedge. If you haven't looked at it, check it out. But Zero Hedge had started talking about Bitcoin in 2013. And I started looking at it. It was probably $20 or $30 to buy Bitcoin back then. And of course, as the price of Bitcoin went up, I started thinking, oh, I wish I'd have been involved in that. But eventually I bought my first Bitcoin end of 2014, beginning of 2015, and paid the princely sum of around $300 per Bitcoin. I seem to remember paying £200 a Bitcoin at the time. So that was my first time that I dived into cryptocurrency. And that got me into this world of back then, even more than it is now, highly technical world of cryptocurrency. So I started building mining rigs. I had GPU cards laying all over the place, and I had these mining rigs that I'd literally knocked up out of bits of aluminium and GPU cards hanging on aluminium frames. Much to my wife's dismay, I might add, all over the house. And I was mining Ethereum. And Ethereum had only just ICO'd, and we were playing around with all sorts of mining. It was highly technical. All of the wallets were Linux applications that you compiled yourself from source code. So my understanding, and everybody's understanding back then, was that cryptocurrency was a very technical thing. Now that's starting to become less and less, but my vision was, if cryptocurrency, which is a beautiful thing, if you look at the concept of what it is, it's a beautiful thing, it's freedom for people. If you looked at cryptocurrency, if you could just make it easy and accessible, then everybody would use it. Now, that's how Electroneum was born, the concept of it. I had a team of coders that were app developers, and we thought, you know what, let's make a cryptocurrency that just runs on smartphones. You don't need any skills at all to get involved. And of course, that's what we've done. We had this huge inflationary phase where we've just pushed out ETN in a massive way to get it to the market. And you'll understand why I'm putting Electroneum into this speech in a moment, because I've got some insights into the market that most people, 99.9999% of people in crypto, don't have. So what we did is we got a massive amount of users, 2.4 million app installs, and hundreds of thousands of people using Electroneum. Now, I'll come on to that in a moment, but it's important because it's given us an insight. And when we have a look at that title of the document, which I'm finally getting around to starting, what drives adoption? So does the market drive adoption, or does adoption drive the market? So if we have to think about it, first of all, is what on earth is the market and what is adoption? So first of all, when we think, a lot of people still consider that market participation is adoption. And perhaps in some ways that's right, but that's certainly not how I see it. Let me give an analogy. If you imagine the cryptocurrency markets are sort of a little like the equities markets. Now, I think my lawyers will literally melt down at me saying that, but this is the reality of how people use them. They are largely speculative, much like the equities markets. You can buy in, you can sell out with fiat, much like the equities markets, and there's volatility like equities markets. So, before I go on, I might just say, the usual disclaimer applies to this video. This is not investment advice. Please don't treat it as such. This is just my opinion piece on adoption and the markets. So, if we look at that and say, okay, so in equity terms, if you had, let's say, an airline. So if we pick British Airways, people could buy some shares in British Airways and they could sell some shares and they could speculate on those shares, but they wouldn't necessarily have to ever fly on the aeroplane. So that is fundamentally different to what we've got going on in cryptocurrency. So at the moment, largely, cryptocurrency is consumed by the same people and used within that same group. It's the cryptocurrency enthusiast group that is largely using cryptocurrency. Now, if I explain what I mean by that, if you imagine most things, the people that develop the technology very rarely are the biggest users. Most people would make a very smart app, but the very smart app makers are not the people that are using it. It's designed for someone else. It's designed for people to order a cab or whatever. So we are in this thing. It's a growing community, but it is largely driven by the crypto community. Now, when you take a look outside of crypto, that airline, that or whatever company it would be, it needs to have users. It needs to have people who run it, it needs to have people who drive it, it needs to have people who consume it or make use of it. If you imagine you had 50 airplanes sitting on the tarmac, but you didn't have any pilots and you didn't have any customers, or you've just described 50% of the top 100 projects in the coin market cap list. Investopedia did a piece where they said that 50% of the top 100 cryptocurrencies have no utility and no users. So it's a sort of a shocking thing to see. Now that is the market. This is very much the market. Now that doesn't mean that they're not exceedingly well traded and exceedingly well speculated upon. They absolutely are. So, but there's this strange sort of dichotomy between the use of the product and its market. So this is where I see this differing between market and adoption. So what we've got is, if you take a look at, let's have a look at the market being speculative and adoption being someone making use of it. Now I use Bitcoin all the time because I'm right into this market, and Bitcoin has a fantastic piece of utility, which is it enables you to move value around the world quickly, easily, and seamlessly. Now, I've used banks to try and move money around the world. Some of the deals that we've done have needed fiat moved around the world, and it is a nightmare. It's really, really, really hard to move fiat from the UK, for instance, or through to African countries or Southeast Asian countries. It's very difficult to do it, and it takes a long time. It might take days and days to arrive. It's frustrating. And phone calls, why hasn't it arrived yet? Oh, we're still waiting. Bitcoin, it's in. It's really easy. It might take 40 minutes before the confirmations have come in and they consider it to be disposable, but they can see it immediately. It's on its way. Now, this is a fundamental change, and that's why crypto is going to take off. But it's the utility that gets it to be used. Now, there are tons and tons of projects out there that maybe they have some imaginary utility that could be used, but at what point does it become utility? It's if you invent something that doesn't get used, I'm not so sure that it's got a utility until somebody goes, it's useful. So, from Electroneum's point of view, we knew we had to catch up with some of these projects that were out there that were way ahead of us in terms of time, which is why we had to pump out ETN to a large number of people to get adoption. 3.8 million registered users, 2.4 million app installs. Now, that's come to an end, actually. It's come to an end this weekend. Our ETN reward system has just been shut off because we're getting into the next phase, which is why I have this insight into market and adoption. So what's been really interesting is that Electroneum deals with largely the unbanked. We're trying to solve a problem which cryptocurrency is literally the most beautiful solution to. And the problem is that a huge volume of the world's people are either underbanked or unbanked. They don't have access to banking. And even if they did, that doesn't magically make them part of the global financial community. So let me explain what I mean by that. Often in these countries, you will find that banking costs money. It doesn't sort of free service. You don't have a free bank account. It's costing you money every month to own it. If you are only earning $80 a month in whatever the local currency is, but if you're earning $80 a month, you don't want to part with any of that to pay the bank. And even if you did, what good would it do? So this is the critical part. So if you had a bank account, and remember that that bank account might well give you access then into having perhaps an exchange account and being able to buy Bitcoin. But if you haven't got a bank account, you probably can't buy any other cryptocurrencies. So Electroneum came along because we thought, you know what? We see these people. We think that there's a solution. Cryptocurrency is the solution for this international transfer, because where the bank falls down as well is even if they have a bank account, if you had $3 and you found somebody who could do some work for you, really, really low cost, in Nigeria, in Indonesia, and you thought, brilliant, I want to send them $3. It's laughable. It's going to cost you $30 to send the $3 to Indonesia, and it's going to take days to get there. So you've got to build up this relationship and spend $33 to get $3 worth of work. Now, cryptocurrency gets rid of that. You've got almost free transfer. It's very, very, very tiny amounts. It might be a fraction of a cent to transfer that sort of amount of value. So you're not sending money, you're sending cryptocurrency. So the cryptocurrency, on the other end, has to have some value. Now, with the Bitcoins of the world, the value is absolute. We know it because Bitcoin is very well established in having a value. It's volatile, but it has a value. So with Electroneum, we had to make sure we got value on the ground. And I promise I am getting to the point. But what we did is we tied up with mobile operators. 140 countries are covered, hundreds of mobile operators enabling us to allow top-up of airtime for ETN directly from our app. So if you have ETN, you do know that it has a value. And that value is ascribed to it because you can purchase something that you are familiar with. Now, this is where I get to the market and adoption. What we've seen, we've had more than 100,000 top-ups of airtime with ETN directly from our app. And what we have seen is that there is a tally between market price of ETN and the amount of people topping up at that point. So that volatility that's taking place. So even though these people are miles away from crypto exchanges and perhaps diving into cryptocurrency per se, they are super, super aware of the market. So they see that their $1 that they've earned, so they might have earned, so we've got a facility to enable people to earn cryptocurrency through something called AnyTask, which I might plug at the end. But they've earned some cryptocurrency, or they were rewarded some cryptocurrency. So they have it, they have ETN, but they don't necessarily spend it. Now, you will all be familiar with this. Hodling. If you're not familiar with the phrase hodling, you definitely need to Google it. Hodling is holding. People in cryptocurrency like to hold onto it. Now, there's a good reason for that. If you look back in history to somebody who I metaphorically take my hat off to, the chap that started adoption of Bitcoin went off and bought a pizza, or maybe 2 pizzas, but he bought some pizza for 10,000 Bitcoin. And I salute him because he genuinely took something and turned it from conceptual into actual. He made it into a real thing with utility. So he swapped his value for something in the real world. Now, for those of you who followed that, the 10,000 Bitcoin is worth now, what, $100 million? So those pizzas cost $100 million in today's Bitcoin terms. And people are fairly familiar with this. So the phrase hodl came up, or hold. It was actually on Bitcoin Talk which is a forum all of the people used to be on who were mining, probably still going strong. But somebody just said in a drunken rant, you must hold. And he didn't say hold, he typed it wrong and he said hodl. And then everybody started taking the mickey out of him a little bit, saying, what is hodl? How do I hodl? I want to hodl. And this has become part of cryptocurrency law, this concept of holding. Now, if you imagine that sort of goes against the grain of adoption. So that it might bring market participants, but are they adopting it to use? If everybody holds and nobody uses, then you haven't really got something that's going on. You've got the empty aircraft, you've got the no passengers, no pilots. People are just holding. Now, there's this sort of strange issue going on with regards to that. But the reason is because the people that are largely the cryptocurrency community at the moment are the wealthy global north, who have chosen to become market participants speculatively, mostly, not everybody, but a lot. And because of that, they are hoping for gain. And so they speculate and they hold. So that means that you have not got the traction in the adoption side as much as we would like to see. Now, if we take that and have a look at market participants and think, well, how do you make them use it? Well, they should be using it because they believe in it. But remember that what they've got a choice of is so many convenient ways to pay. So in my pocket, I've got Apple Pay, I've got Visa cards, I've got debit cards and MasterCards, and I've got PayPal, and I've got all sorts of ways to pay digitally that came before cryptocurrency. And they're convenient. But just as importantly, not only are they convenient, but they also spend my horrible fiat that I'm not so keen on. And why am I not keen on it? Well, look at the world. The world literally is printing money like we've never done before. And, I understand why we're doing it, because, we're in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic that we're trying to economically survive. But do I agree with it? I don't know, because when you think about what has happened to other economies that have printed with wild abandon, you have not seen wonderful outcomes from those. I'm not going to name and shame those countries. Some of them are still in the midst of it. Some of them are historic. But you know what comes of it. You know what comes of printing. You will devalue the underlying fiat currency, so your US dollar, your pound, etc., your euro. So I have a choice. I've got in my pocket, I could spend some Bitcoin or I could spend some pounds. Now I know that quantitative easing and by any other name the same things are going on. So I think I'd rather spend my pounds and speculate on the Bitcoin. So that's me personally. Like I say, it's not investment advice, but what you will see across the community is the same thing. And we are seeing it in Electroneum, even though the people have probably not earned that Electroneum speculatively. They've done it as a supplement to their income, meager income, I might say. So, what does this tell us? It means that the market participants are always savvy about the market. So we do know that there's a joining between adoption and the market. And we've certainly learned some things that even if you didn't join the market speculatively, you didn't go to a bank and send some money to an exchange, convert it into a speculative asset. So you didn't do that. You just ended up with some. You ended up with some by being rewarded by it, by taking it from someone. So we've had 270,000 plus app-to-app transfers. So this is one person with the Electroneum wallet and another person. Scan a QR code, it goes bloop, and you have this instant payment technology that we've built. Gives them an instant payment notification, and so they can walk up to a street vendor, bloop, and walk away. Now, that's taking place. 270,000 plus of those have taken place. So people are ending up with ETN, and it is out there in the real world, but they haven't necessarily done it to speculate. They're just doing it because it's a new way to transfer value between people. But what's interesting is that they've got this eye on the market. Our app converts between whatever their local currency is, be it US dollar or GBP, or more likely Rand or something else. But it will tell them what the ETN is worth today in their wallet, and they can see it changing with the volatility of the markets. So we've learned a lot from this. But what we've learned probably above everything else is that if we have cryptocurrency as the best possible vehicle for global remittance, and it's a brilliant, genius method for moving value between people in the developing world who don't have Apple Pay, they don't have Visa, MasterCard, they don't have any of those digital payment techniques, then suddenly cryptocurrency is the answer for those people. So Electroneum has embraced regulation. I mean, I'm a libertarian. I believe in people's financial liberty, and I love projects like Bitcoin in an unregulated market. We've chosen to go down the regulated path because we want to take away the fear that corporates have of cryptocurrency. There's still quite a lot of fear, and there's a lot of government fear. Mostly government fear in the markets that we're talking to is about flight of capital. They worry that they have quite tight capital controls on their economy, and they fear that cryptocurrency will enable people to push value out of their country. But of course, Electroneum is we're totally KYC, AML based, and what we're all about is driving new money from the global north down into the global south. We're trying to bring money into an economy. But what you'll find is this is, yet again, I get back to my point about adoption of market. So we're talking about corporates adopting crypto. Now, everybody in the crypto market talks about adoption as if adoption is people joining the market. So we've seen the furore with JP Morgan in and out. Are we in, are we out? Is everybody in JP Morgan going to get fired if they touch crypto, or are they going to deal with it as a company? We've seen Fidelity enter the crypto market. We've seen pension companies, with everyone saying, if pension companies get into crypto, if they adopt crypto, crypto is going to go crazy, what they talk about. But again, they're talking speculatively. They're not necessarily talking about adoption. So if somebody says, if the pension companies adopt cryptocurrency, and let's use Bitcoin as the example, but if pension companies adopt Bitcoin, it's going to go crazy. But what do they mean by adopt? I think they mean join the market. Now, pension companies, certainly in my opinion, would be crazy not to have a small percentage of their investment in Bitcoin. To me, it boggles my mind that they haven't been able to achieve that. But remember that being in the market isn't necessarily adopting. I would rather see a pension company accept Bitcoin for the premiums. That's adoption. I would like to see a pension company give the option of being paid out in Bitcoin. That's adoption. So what this whole speech is about is to get into people's heads that actually the market and adoption are two separate things at the moment. And we're starting to see perhaps these parallel lines start to conjoin. And that's where we need cryptocurrency to be adopted. Now, we believe strongly at Electroneum that adoption is going to come from the global south. As much as the global north are the ones pushing it and the ones making that market. So they are creating a market. And remember that the market leads to value, and cryptocurrency doesn't exist unless it has value. So I'm certainly not saying one works without the other, but there's this symbiosis, a symbiotic relationship between market and adoption that doesn't necessarily work like anything else. You can have a market without adoption. You can have adoption without the market. It's very weird. But the adoption without the market is problematic. At the moment, the market without adoption is less problematic, but certainly mysterious. If you imagine the huge market capitalizations of those projects that genuinely have no users, and picture an airline with empty aircraft, a company would soon disappear if it had no customers. And yet projects are up there being traded that have no users whatsoever. Very interesting. So certainly a strange time. But the global south is where I believe that we're going to see mass adoption, which is the sort of phrase that gets used all the time in crypto. Loads of people say we're going to bring about mass adoption. It's a phrase that we've used ourselves. We are very much passionate about creating that. But we've been on a journey. We've been on a journey that has enabled us to learn an awful lot. Some people would say we have created mass adoption. We have 3.8 million registered users. I want to see 38 million registered users. We see 100,000 top-ups, which is a lot of top-ups in cryptocurrency. We see 270,000+ app-to-app transfers, but I want to see that as 2.7 million. I want to see a million top-ups. And we will see all those things as we move forwards. But it's interesting, is it not, that those people that can actually use something for a benefit are also seeing the speculative side. So both of these things are going to conjoin. We are going to get the market and adoption to join together. I don't think they've joined together yet. I think that they are still a bit disparate, but it's starting to happen. And what you will see is that the projects that are out there that have got real world utility and are genuinely driving value and are genuinely creating a benefit for someone, they are going to be the projects that last and stand the test of time. So decades, not 6 months or 18 months, but decades. They are going to be the brands that move forwards and really change the world. And we're still at the earliest stages of crypto, even though it might be 10 years old. We are at the earliest stages. I can remember looking at the mobile phone market in 1989 when I just thought this market is completely saturated. I had an opportunity to get involved in a project and I said, no, this market is saturated. It can't go any further. And how wrong I was back then. And it's what actually made me realise that mistake that I'd made, which was an investment opportunity that I had, made me realise don't underestimate the ability for things to change. And when I saw crypto come along, I thought this is the future, and it still is. We will see massive adoption of this technology, and at the moment it is in the very embryonic stages. So whilst there are a lot of people saying, oh, Bitcoin, the bubble has burst. I mean, Lord, how many times have I heard that over the years? When I bought at $300 odd, I genuinely thought, I think I bought at the top here. Everybody talks about the tulip mania of whatever it was, 1637, 1640, where there was this crazy speculation over tulip bulbs. And they went to the moon, as the crypto community was saying. Tulips to the moon. So what happened is eventually people realised that you could get more tulips and actually they became back to the same value that they always had. There was this crazy speculative rush on them. And then loads of people have told me this over the years, that Bitcoin is dead. It's had its time and the bubble has burst, or the bubble is about to burst. It's constant. But then it finds a new wave and does grow out further. And we do get more market participation and we do get more adoption. Bitcoin's got good adoption. Please don't think that I'm saying Bitcoin hasn't got good adoption. It has. There's loads of projects that haven't, but Bitcoin genuinely does, so does Ethereum. So those projects that gain adoption are the ones to watch, in my opinion. And when we see that tulip mania, the bubbles, etc., and you think across the products that are in the market, I don't think some of them are even tulips. At least a tulip you could plant and have something at the end of it. I don't think a lot of the projects in the top 100 even have the tulip bulb. So there are some fairly dodgy projects out there, I think. But all in all, I think the conclusion that I will draw for does the market drive adoption or does adoption drive the market is that neither of those drive each other, but the market certainly exists and creates participation. So it is a light amount of adoption, but it takes a long time. You've seen where Bitcoin hasn't got a driving force. It just exists as a wonderful, unregulated freedom product. And I love Bitcoin, so please don't ever think that this is a negative thing about it. It so isn't. But it takes time for it to be embraced and adopted because there's nobody out there making it happen. And because it's unregulated, it's something that the governments of the world and corporates of the world have got to get used to, which they will. So the market hasn't created mass adoption. And that's, in my opinion, all because everybody is up here in the wealth area already. Once this goes out and it becomes really embraceable in the global south, where people can really embrace it, then you will see massive adoption. And then, ironically, I think that the adoption will drive the market. So at the moment, I think we probably have started with market driving a little adoption. And now what we're going to do is we're going to see that spin right round on its head and we're going to see massive adoption drive the markets. So I don't have a straight answer. I've got a topsy-turvy answer, but I did have an awful lot of insight that I wanted to share with you about this market and adoption thing. So I hope it's been of interest to you. Certainly, before I leave, I should just say, for cryptocurrency enthusiasts, of which there are hundreds of people watching this, I would think. So please take the time to go and have a look at anytask.com. It's the product that we've built that's powered by ETN. And the people that are on there that have listed tasks, there are more than 3,000 tasks listed on that platform. The products that are listed, the services that are listed, are digital tasks like logo design, banner design, animated explainer videos, video editing, sound production, just so many digital tasks, data mining. If you go on there, you can buy with your Visa card and MasterCard. Up in the global north where all this wealth is, you've got all that horrible fiat money you might as well be getting rid of. So go on to AnyTask, and please, you're completely safe, by the way. You've got complete guarantee. It's got an escrow system, so the person will do the work for you and you will be pleased. Otherwise, you'll get your fiat money back. So please go to anytask.com, take a look and get involved, because you are then directly involved with creating true cryptocurrency adoption. Because the people that earn that ETN at the other end, because it's powered by ETN, remember that we can remit that $3 round to Indonesia really easily in ETN. It's not $3, it's $3 of value. And when they've got that $3 of value, they can top up their phone, they can top up their friend's phone, their family's phone, they can turn it back into their local value, whatever their fiat currency is, or favours, or work, or something else. So we've created this ecosystem. Please get involved in it. Go and have a look at Electroneum by all means, but please get involved in AnyTask and buy something. Honestly, you won't believe what you can buy on there. Some of the things are so ridiculously cheap. We have, we're going to shake up that marketplace as well, the freelancer marketplace, by opening up this global south market to the global north. So we've got all this fiat. We don't want it. Go and have a look. Go to anytask.com and buy some tasks from some of the poorest people in the world that have incredible skill. Thank you very much for your time listening to me waffle on about adoption and the market. I hope you gained something from it. I certainly have. I've gained cold feet standing on my tile floor. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for this, Richard. If you wish to hear more about this, or if you have questions, you will also find Richard today from 1 to 3 p.m. at Electroneum booth, as well as here on the main stage again for a panel happening at 5 o'clock. Now let's continue with our first panel of the day, and for that I would like to welcome the panel moderator Freya Stevens, who is a PR and marketing specialist working in blockchain and fintech sectors, and she's also the founding member of the collective. I would also like to welcome other panelists: Philip Santner, who is the head of Frankfurt School Blockchain Center, Lauren Sabo, who is a manager of BDO, and also Gloria Wu, who is the chief of global ecosystem partnerships of Ontology. Freya, on to you.
Hi, thank you. Thanks to everyone who's joining the show today. I hope you're enjoying the conference. My name is Freya. I'm pleased to be moderating the panel today on Libra, China, and the digital programmable euro, getting real about CBDC. It's a big topic. We have a short session, but we're going to do our best to take you through the insights that we have for you today. And I'm very pleased to have with me some of the best intelligentsia in the field of CBDCs. You've already been introduced, so we won't do that. But perhaps we will just jump straight in, given our time constraints. And I wonder if we could begin with you, Philip. Few people have thought more deeply about the different forms a digital euro might take. And it's a hot topic right now with China's digital currency test phase underway and COVID-19. There seems to be a sudden need for other countries to get their digital currencies out the door. So I wonder if you could talk to us about what are the options for the euro, and are any of them a good fit?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. It's a hot topic these days in politics, economics, startups, corporations. Not too many people, to be very honest, understand what we are talking about here, especially in the level of decision makers. But it's, in my mind, it's pretty clear that the digital programmable euro, as I call it, will at some point of time come. There are three big variants here. So first of all, you could do it with the central bank. That would be a CBDC that would be run by the European Central Bank. The ECB is experimenting in this field, but to be honest, it's not going too quickly, not as quick as in China. Therefore, it will take probably 5, 6, or maybe 7 years until we are live here with the ECB-initiated CBDC. Alternatively, you could run the euro by a private organization with all licenses required on top of existing change. This could be run on top of Ontology, it could be run on top of the Ethereum network and so on. So plugging a token in euro denoted on top of existing public blockchain systems, this would work. And the third version where I think that this will be the most interesting one and is the one where the euro would run on top of Libra, Facebook's Libra project. So you take the euro, put it in a token on top of Libra. It's called Euro. It's not a stable coin anymore. And I think this could be coming to us early next year. So these are the three main variants. I would think that the Libra version is probably the one which gets the most traction as of 2021.
Okay, that's so interesting. I'd like to bring Lorenz in at this point to talk a bit about the Libra project and whether he thinks this global payment system is going to disrupt the future, or whether people will be running scared due to its ties with Facebook, fears over surveillance, some dubbing it as the Big Brother coin. Yes, your thoughts, Lorenz?
Good morning. Thank you very much. Well, it's an interesting discussion. When I started researching this topic, it is so changing, so fluid what's happening, especially with Libra. They just introduced a new CEO. They have partners coming in, disappearing. My main point with Libra is actually coming from the paper they published. And in the paper, they point out that the barrier of entry for banking is very high still in developing countries. And they quote the $40 smartphone and probably the Libra Association as the solution for this problem. And this is where my little gear started turning around. I said, well, one moment, please. The $40 smartphone is actually here. We have $100 smartphones. And privacy researchers have been pointing out that these smartphones are a sucker for data. So they do a lot of data analytics to finance these cheap smartphones. So they're not so good, actually. And the other thing is the argument in the white paper is that for third worlds, they would enable payment systems. If you look at existing payment systems like M-Pesa, they're already doing very well. So the question is, who are they competing with? What is the idea of Facebook or the Libra Association here? And if you look at the current members of the association, this is why I have such a hard time to combine them with central banking digital currencies, it's almost all private companies. We talk about Uber, Spotify, Shopify, and a few others. So for me, Libra right now has the feeling more or less of a shopping system where, you get points if you use this system and you have all the partners integrated. And if you look at the history of the criticism against Libra, of course, the first argument was against pegging it against the US dollar or any other reserve currency, where they say that Libra would really benefit from that, but not the users. And the more interesting argument against Libra came a few days later from economists from UK, actually, who said, well, it's not so much about the digital money with Libra. It's more about Facebook becoming the digital identity provider that this currency would enable them. So this is basically my current stance on the Libra. And I think it's very exciting to continue if they can go into the central banking digital currency with this or not.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm going to bring Gloria in now to speak about the situation in China. Of course, it's one of the first major economies to unveil a digital currency called the DCEP, for those who are new to the topic. While we're busy modeling the impact of different designs on our infrastructures in Europe, China is pushing ahead. I feel like this is a race. So can you tell us what the DCEP is about and who is it aimed at?
Sure. Thank you, Freya, for the question. I think this could also be connected to the previous conversations we're having at this panel discussion. So DCEP stands for Digital Currency Electronic Payment. So it's basically, it's not really based on blockchain. It's basically a digital currency that is part of the monetary policy, monetary system of the central bank in China. So from my point of view, the reason why the Central Bank of China introduced DCEP, there are several reasons, right? So the first one, we need to take a look at the global dynamics of the financial system and its competition. So this is also the background why we now see Libra is also being a challenger that providing an alternative fiat remittance solution, challenging the positions of several central banks in the world. So traditionally, US dollars has been the primary remittance currency that is dominating the global economy, right? So for something like Libra to develop, it's also going to have its own system that is also very much connected to the US dollars. So from this macro point of view, of course, you can imagine that China would be interested in building something of their own, trying to also introduce the Chinese currency to become more internationalized. So this is one of the very important motivation, and also the progress with Libra definitely accelerated the whole progress. Second one is it's also together with the general theme of this concept called the new infrastructure building that is happening in the Chinese economy. So China has been benefiting a lot in the last decades in terms of building infrastructures, and because of the infrastructure building of bridges, of railways, of real estates, it's actually give a big basis for the economic growth in the last decades. So now we're also seeing we need a new stimulation for the growth. So the government has come up with this policy called the new infrastructure investment. So the estimated investment is going to be around 150 billion euros around this new thing. So what is included in this new thing? It's basically fintech. It's 5G, it's blockchain, it's artificial intelligence, and all these technological infrastructure of our future economy. So with the introduction of DCEP, that also opens up a lot of investment and innovation space for fintech-related sectors. So this is the second reason. The third one is also very much connected to the current pandemic situation we're facing, right? So overall, a lot of governments are having liquidity released to the market to help the economy to overcome this difficult phase. But it could be very ineffective. Like from the experiences of the Chinese central bank, every time when they try to provide liquidity, many of such liquidity is basically going to stock market, right? So it doesn't really go into the real economy that helps people. So if there's a traceable, programmable digital money